Hello and welcome to another edition of Community Forum. My name is Joseph Feaster. I'm the host of the program, and my guest today is the Sheriff of Norfolk County, Jerry McDermott. Let me tell you a little bit about Jerry. I've known him ever since he was in Boston and he was a city councilor. He worked for the Division of Capital Assets and Management. He has been committed to social issues around drug abuse and mental illness. Um, he's just been dedicated to those types of issues which are near and dear to my heart. In December of 2018, Governor Baker appointed him as sheriff of Norfolk County, and now he is standing for reelection and certainly wants you to vote for him. So, welcome, Jerry McDermott.
Joe Feaster, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on your show. And I think the last time we were together on cable TV in Stoughton was before the global pandemic hit.
That's right. In fact, Sheriff, it was January 16th when we did a
Wow.
program. And folks, I believe I know you have that up on your website so they can go look at that program and really learn all the details and the things we talked about. But I also want to, since we're only going to do a short stint this particular time, but I'd like you to talk about now you've been there since December of last year. Talk about some of the things that you were able and have been able to put in place at the jail. We talk about some of your accomplishments.
Sure. So thank you, Joe. And when I was appointed by Governor Charlie Baker back in December of 2018, one of the reasons the governor appointed me is we both shared a passion for taking a new approach to dealing with those who are incarcerated and really trying to fix the whole person and look at their underlying mental health issues and substance use disorder. And immediately, I was able to help launch successfully the medication assisted treatment program. And as you know, Joe, there's 14 county sheriffs and only 7 signed up for the pilot program for what we call MAT or MAT, medication assisted treatment. We launched it successfully. And to date, as we're talking today, Joe, we've treated close to 700 men and women, both pre-sentenced and sentenced. And we're checking our numbers all the time with DPH. We've not had a fatal overdose. We are very concerned about people in our care and custody. And sadly, the statistics bear out that the first 72 hours after somebody leaves the Department of Correction or one of the county facilities, those first 72 hours are key. If somebody relapses and they pick up, that's the time when a fatal overdose can occur. So, we don't just dispense medicine. We have robust programming and counseling. So again, we're trying to fix what I say as somebody's broken spirit, because when they come into our care and custody, we're not there to judge them. I don't have a black robe. None of my staff have black robes. We're there to take care of the people in our care and custody and make sure that when they leave us, they're on the path to recovery.
Sheriff, I know for a fact because I'm in that space dealing with mental illness, suicide, and as you know, that's my ministry and my
Sure.
passion. Um, One of the things I also know that a large segment, maybe not at the jails, but a large segment of the population who are incarcerated suffer from mental illness.
That's
What
right.
are the types of programs that you? What is the percentage at the jail, the Norfolk County Jail, and what are the treatment programs that you have in place for that population?
Sure. So sadly, the number hovers around 75 to 80% of the men and women who are incarcerated suffer a dual diagnosis, as we call it. That's some underlying mental health issue and substance use disorder. So it might be depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia. And a lot of these people, their mental health issues were not addressed properly or adequately when they were young. It wasn't addressed when they were 9, 10, 11 years old. So sadly, by the time they get to junior high and high school, they're self-medicated. They're picking up whether it's alcohol or drugs. They are treating themselves. We call it self-medicating, and they not surprisingly, become involved with the court system, and then they wind up incarcerated. And I've always said, uh, with such high percentages of people with mental health issues, would they not be better served with other programs rather than being incarcerated? And I know that we've shut down the state mental health hospitals. One not too far from us out in Medfield is going to be redeveloped into condos. But there's a growing chorus of people saying across the Commonwealth, we need to have this conversation about our mental health and mental health hospitals and getting people decarcerated and into programs that would better suit their needs. So what we're doing is medication-assisted treatment. We have a great behavioral health department that counsels our inmates. And then we have our medical unit, which dispenses medicine to wean them off of the illicit drugs that they've been using on the street. So, it might be methadone or Suboxone. And some folks go completely cold turkey, and we assist them with Vivitrol, which is on average about every 27 to 30 days, they'll get a shot of Vivitrol, which works wonders both for heroin and for alcohol. And if they do that and they go to their behavioral health, and Joe, I have to point out, there's a spiritual component. We have rabbis, we have imams, we have Protestant clergy, we have Roman Catholic priests. And not everybody wants to afford themselves of the opportunity, but we put it out there. And we do talk to people in AA. We have AA programs and NA programs up at the House of Correction. And we say, how have things been going when you're trying to fix this on your own? How have you done, right? If you keep doing the same thing and getting the same result, you got to change something up. So a lot of the men and women who have found peace and sobriety and the road to recovery have done so by embracing that spiritual component. So we're tackling it from all angles because it's such an important issue.
Well, I started with that, and I don't, because there are many people who think about the sheriff's department that the only thing you do is incarcerate people, get them ready pre-sentencing, and get them ready for trial. I wanted to start there because our time is going to be short. I want to talk about the election, but I do want people to go on your website and look at, there's a civil process component. You have a health services unit, a defender program. You have a reentry initiative. You got a senior program. You got victim services, you got youth programs. I want them to go on and look at all of those things, because not only do you incarcerate and hold folks in preparation for going to trial, you do have them post-conviction as well for short periods of time. But the reality is, I just wanted them to know the breadth of the service, and that there's a human side to the work that you do as sheriff. And you are committed to that because of what the managerial and the sensitivities that you brought to this position as Sheriff of Norfolk County.
Thank you, Joe. And a big piece of what we do too is partner with Dove. Domestic violence ended, and October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so oftentimes we'll have the batterer, and we'll have him in custody. We want to make sure he's a better person when he leaves us. So I asked the folks at Dove to come up and look at our curriculum and say, what more beyond anger management and some of the other classes, what could we be offering the offender so that he is a better man when he leaves us, and then that family is safer upon his return and hopefully successful reentry into society. So there's a lot more that goes into it than just holding people. Maybe 30 years ago, the sheriff was the keeper of the keys, right? And people would say 30 years ago, lock up the bad guys. It is so complex today. In our society is even more complex, and we're more aware of all of the facets that go into why somebody becomes court involved in the first place.
Well, I supported Wyatt Earp back in the day when I had my own ones, and I support you as sheriff. So let's talk about that. You have an election that's coming up on November 3rd.
Coming up fast.
Standing for re-election because you want to remain as sheriff. But as I talked to you offline, I said, well, oftentimes as spoilers, we try to get someone with a similar last name in the race for the person who is running. But in this case, it's all legitimate. There are two McDermotts in the race. How are you going to, two things, how are you going to get them to get to Jerry McDermott? And two, we know that with the national election going on, everyone is going to be looking up ballot. how are you going to be able to drive folks to pay attention to the sheriff's race? So those two issues, the two McDermott issue and the
Yeah.
position in the ballot.
So Joe, it's so interesting because there are two McDermotts on the ballot for sheriff. I'll be number one on the ballot for sheriff. And what we've been saying to people is, vote to keep Sheriff Jerry at the jail. That's a little takeoff on a gentleman from Quincy who was Tim for treasurer back in the day when there were two Cahills running.
Right.
And it can get confusing. I know that in Plymouth, there was a Sheriff McDonough, and he lost to a Sheriff McDonald. And people still to this day say that it was voters made mistakes. So what we're trying to say to people is, look, we're number one on the ballot in the race for Norfolk County Sheriff, and keep Sheriff Jerry at the jail. Now, as you mentioned, Joe, a lot of people will go out and they'll vote for the current president or they'll vote for Vice President Biden. And then they'll leave. They'll actually leave all the other down ballot races and ballot questions blank. And that's awful because the experts are telling me we could see a record turnout, maybe 400,000 people could come out to vote in Norfolk County by voting early ballot, which is coming out really soon, voting early in person, October 17 through October 30, or voting on election day, November 3rd. So with all those opportunities to vote, we're going to see a huge turnout, could be 400,000. Wouldn't it be a shame if the experts are right that 50,000 people will blank the race for sheriff? They'll just vote for president and they'll leave the voting location. So we're really trying to reach people to say, this is an important role. The role of sheriff is probably the least partisan position in government. And it's not so much about locking up the bad guys. Our role really is helping people with underlying mental health issues and substance use disorder change the path of their life. And if you can help fix that person's problems, not only healing that individual, you're healing that family. And in a broader sense, you're making that entire neighborhood and community safer because of the men and women that we have in our care and custody. Joe, 97%, imagine that, 97% are coming right back to the community that they came from. So if they came from Randolph or Stoughton or Milton or Wellesley or Dover, that's where they're going to return to. So I really feel strongly it's incumbent upon me as sheriff to make sure that people are better off when they leave us than when they came in our doors. And it's a big role, but I love it. And, for 22 months now, we've had some great success.
Let's talk about it. I mean, we make the presumption that folks even know what constitutes Norfolk County, what comes under your jurisdiction,
Sure.
Where do the people come from who you housed and who I say are your customers.
Yes.
Let's give folks the geographic, because it may be viewers will look at this from a place and not even know that they're affected by it because, as you just said, when persons come back, hopefully rehabilitated, they're going to return to the same communities many times from which they came. So therefore, folks need to know what communities are being talked about. So Sheriff, why don't you enlighten us?
Sure. So there's 28 communities. There's the big city of Quincy, and then there's 27 other towns. So Avon, Brookline, Braintree, Bellingham, Canton, Dover, Dedham, Franklin.
I'm testing you now.
Testing me now. There's all the M's, the Medways, Millis, Medfield. There's Westwood, Rentham, Wellesley, Weymouth.
Well, you mentioned Randolph. You mentioned Stoughton.
Stoughton, yep. Sharon is another one. I think I've hit them all. I've actually got a map on my wall, Joe, that I keep. But it's massive. It goes from Plainville in Bellingham on the Rhode Island border, and then it comes up to all the down county areas like Walpole and Rentham and Norfolk, and then you get into the greater Boston area, just around the edge there by Dedham, through Norwood and Westwood. So it's it's bigger than a congressional district. And the lion's share of people that we get, they are white Roman Catholics, and they come from the biggest populated parts of the county. So it's no surprise most of our customers, as you call them, come from Quincy. And the number one driver is addiction to drugs. It's mental health issues and addiction.
The you know that I wanted folks to know how expansive the area that you cover, but your jail is in Dedham.
Jail's in Dedham, right off the
Right.
highway, in between Route 128 north and south. It's in Dedham, but technically you'd get off exit 17 in Needham to find us. And we've got two buildings up there. One is the House of Correction and Jail, and the other building is what we call our pre-release center, also known as the Dedham Alternative Center. That pre-release center is where right now the men who are very close to hopefully a successful reentry back to our neighborhoods will go out and hone their skills, whether it's painting, landscaping, light carpentry, culinary arts. We want to make sure folks have a job when they leave us and a roof over their head. But real quick, Joe, that building, I'm going to retrofit half of it for our female offenders. Because when I became sheriff, females were sent unfairly to MCI Framingham. And that's not a nice place. Even their family and defense attorneys did not want to visit. So we brought the families back. I partnered with Sheriff Steve Tompkins in Suffolk, and our female offenders are now over at South Bay. But we're going to retrofit, get rid of the metal bunk beds and put real wood furniture with a donation from the Kraft family. And we're going to have, with DCF's blessing and caseworkers' blessing, mom and child visits, parenting classes, because mom's coming out and she's going to have her children back, please God. And we want to make sure that that family is healed, because again, if you can break the dysfunction there, you can break a cycle in a family. And it's so important to do these types of things. When I first became sheriff, somebody, I'll use my own last name, McDermott. I'll change the last name, but they said, "Oh, that's that guy McDermott. We used to have his dad in here too." And that hit me, Joe. I said, whoa, right? We got to change what's happening within families to break that cycle so that it's not normal that somebody in the family is incarcerated. We've got to do more to help them.
Talk a little bit about some of the outreach programs, because I started out with the substance abuse and mental illness because I wanted to humanize the experience that the misnomer that folks have about, in my generation we grew up with Wyatt Earp, and so that's what we understood. It was the jail and that was it. It has grown more than that, is what you told
Yes.
us. We started there. I mentioned in terms of the other services, civil process and other programs, senior programs, youth programs, because you want to be a part of the community and you want to make it better and safer for the community. You talked about your rehabilitation types program. Talk a little bit about, since you have been there, other things that you have done, because we know your population ebbs and flow, but there are things, Jerry, that you have brought to, and I don't want to say sheriff because I want folks to focus on what the position is and that you're running.
Yeah.
So there are things that you have brought because of your skills and your mindset, sheriff, that you brought to the jail. What are some of those?
Sure. So previously I had been the chief of staff over at DCAM, which is the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance. And I had worked on solar projects, for example, with all 14 county sheriffs. So I brought that skill set with me, and with our water conservation programs and putting in a solar panel array, we've saved thousands and thousands of dollars on our electricity costs. We also launched successfully a task force for juvenile mental health and substance use disorder. And we also did outreach to our seniors with the Are You OK program, Files of Life, and what we call the Yellow Dot program. And I went out to all 28 communities to hit the Council on Aging and educate seniors about how they don't have to feel isolated at home, and they can sign up for free for these life-saving programs. So we've had a broad reach, broad impact. We've launched some organic gardening programs for our inmates to sharpen their skills. We're also going to be working with the New England Masonry Foundation on a hardscape program, so that if you've ever seen beautiful brick patios and serpentine walkways, we really have a lot of the men and women who come into our care and custody have already some good skills. We're going to have them work on those skills so that when they do turn their life around and they do leave us, they have the ability to go out and be a provider, be a productive member of society again, because so many of the people that come into us, Joe, you'd be surprised. I've got doctors, I've got lawyers incarcerated. They have a certain skill set, but no one is immune. It doesn't matter if you're from Weymouth or Wellesley, or if you're from Brookline or Braintree, does not matter. People's lives can quickly go off the rails, particularly if they're not getting their mental health issues adequately dealt with, and it can be explosive. And sometimes families have to intervene when a loved one, when mom or dad or a niece or nephew are out of control. And the only thing they have, sadly, sometimes is Section 35. They have to section a family member, and it's heartbreaking. So a lot of the outreach and programs we do have an educational component. We go out to the schools. I've personally gone out to junior high schools and high schools, talk to our young men and women, and I'll try to bring with me an inmate who is baby faced. I had this one guy, he was great, Elijah. He is successfully out joined the Painters Union, but Elijah was 26, but he looked like he was maybe 19. And Elijah would go out and talk to the young men and women and say to them, hey, listen, how many of you like these video games like Fortnite and Mortal Kombat, and who likes Doritos and pizza and ice cream? And everyone's hands, oh yeah, I like that, I like that. He says, you get none of that in jail.
That's
You
right.
get none of that.
Right.
And they're dead silent. Joe, you could hear a pin drop when he spoke.
Right.
And he spoke about his own dad smoking a joint with him when he was 9 years old. And he went from there, lived with an aunt in Mississippi for a while, Florida, back to Dorchester, and ended up, I believe, in Randolph. When I got to know him in our care and custody, he was already on the road to recovery and just the nicest young man. We really hit it off, Elijah and I. And when he left, he said to me, Sheriff, don't take it the wrong way, but I hope to never see you again. And I said, we fist bumped. I said, Elijah, you made it. You're going to do great. And he just loved painting. He said, I never knew I had this skill. And he's making big money now with the Painters Union. So
Well, that's,
he's well on his way.
yeah, well, that's the remarkable, and I wanted to have you talk about that because again, we as a society want to cut the recidivism in terms of folks returning and returning and the revolving door back into your facility. So we're concerned. But before I want you, because what I want to wrap with is why folks should vote for you. But before I get there, in this, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about you trying to run your facility in this era of COVID. Talk to me about what it has done, because there's financial implications, there's health implications for your workers as well as the inmates. Talk to me about what this experience has been these past going on now almost 9 or 10 months.
So, Joe, it has been probably the toughest time for anyone to manage a facility like this where it's hard to socially distance. You're talking 335 employees and on average 380 inmates in our care and custody. So I have been a zealot about cleaning. We had bought some sanitizing guns early on. I personally went out with my own money and bought each inmate a full-size bar of Dial antibacterial soap. We got buy-in from the inmates, and I said, look, this is a weak virus. You can kill it on the surface of your hands, but frequent hand washing, good hygiene, using hand sanitizer, wearing a mask when you come out of your cell. We did space out our inmates the best we could, and we have really managed it. And today we have zero active cases. So we've been,
Gotta give you a hand there.
Global pandemic. It's been serious, but in jail you can have what we call the climate rise, and guys can get angry if they don't have visits. And I had to, for a period of time, say we not only are not going to have contact visits, we're going to have no visits. And instead, I gave each inmate every week 3 envelopes with a stamp, and I said, you're going to write an old-fashioned letter. And I started off with 15 minutes of free phone calls. Then I went to 30 minutes of free phone calls. And what I'm going to do soon, Joe, I'm going to do away with any charges for local phone calls for our inmates, because I think family reunification is so important, and it's proven to lower recidivism and relapses. So I'll be the first sheriff in the county to do that. But it's been something to manage through a global pandemic. But I would hope that the viewers would say, this guy was appointed by Governor Charlie Baker. I'm very moderate. I'm not a partisan guy. It's been steady, calm leadership during a global pandemic. for the last 22 months, we have managed through, and with our Are You OK program, saved 23 lives of senior citizens, some in Stoughton, some in Randolph, some in Milton, some here in Westwood, my own town. And these are people that fell, they broke their hips, broke their wrists. And if not for our daily check-in, our wellness call, we never would have found them.
Well, I have about a minute and a half, and this is your time. Give folks whatever 5 reasons why, whether they vote early or go on November 3rd, why they should vote for number 1 on the sheriff's ballot, Jerry McDermott.
Thank you, Joe. So again, I'm Sheriff Jerry McDermott. I'm a single dad raising 2 girls, and I've been sheriff for 22 months. And during that time, I inherited a $6 million debt. That means we were in red ink up to $6 million. I balanced that budget and ended in the black for the first time in 11 years. Successfully launched the MAT, Medication Assisted Treatment Program. I stopped the unfair practice of having women incarcerated up at MCI Framingham. We launched our brand new task force on juvenile mental health and substance use disorder. And at the end of the day, you can pick somebody else for sheriff who doesn't have the years of experience that I have now. And I'm the only one in the race who's been trained by the National Institute of Corrections. That's a sheriff's school out in Colorado, and the only one who's FBI Leader Trilogy Award recipient. So hopefully people will stick with that steady, calm, proven professional reformer, and that's Sheriff Jerry McDermott, number 1 on the ballot.
Sheriff, you must have seen the clock because you know we're there. I wish you much success in your race.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much.
Happy to have you appear again on Community Forum. You know, as long as I'm doing this program, you're eligible to come join me. So good luck, and I hopefully on November 3rd that you have a successful outcome.
Thank you, Joe. God bless, and stay healthy, my friend.
Likewise.
Bye-bye.